What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Digital Artcast. Thanks for joining me again on another awesome episode. Today we have on some of the UK represent. We've kind of wanted to get more and more representation from the UK and games industry especially, and today we are talking to Mr. Alex Beddows. What's happening, Alex?
Hey dude, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, man, no worries. Yeah, we done a bit of a kind of pre-chat before we started recording, but yeah, like I think the amount I just filled my brain in the last like 10 minutes has been astounding. Like the things you know already that I'm just like feeding it. This is why I love the podcast, right? This is because you talk to people from these walks of life, you know, from concept to 3D and whatever, but then everybody has their own like tool sets and things that work with them, and then you just kind of like pick and choose bits and pieces to like form your own style. So like I can only imagine what it's been like, you know, being in the industry and speaking with people, and then having obviously the resources you have at the moment. Like it just must be like every day your brain must be at capacity, like learning from these people, right?
It's great. Like, 'cause to be honest, I am really lucky to spend as much time speaking to people as I do. I mean, I always have done, even before starting the podcast. I sat in VoIP channels and Discord just talking about ideas with people, with artists. So the podcast is like kind of a natural extension of that. It's just that, it's interesting when you hear you have like 5 people who have the exact same job title, but they have a completely different perception on game art, on the world, on disciplines and software, and you're like, it helps you round out you as a person and your perceptions, and it helps you like just be a bit more informed as well, which is probably one I care more about, is like just having a small understanding and appreciation of things I don't necessarily care about.
Yeah, or you'll probably look into in your own steam, but then somebody already has done that, and then they're feeding that information to you in a condensed and friendly way that makes it easier to understand or easy to digest. So I think that's what's good about like networking events in general or podcasts. I mean, like when I initially started the podcast, my first experience of this was watching Ash Thorpe interview Mike Hill in the workshops, and that's why I kind of want to emulate that, because even just, you know, Mike was talking about things that even Ash was like, oh shit, like I never really thought about that stuff or thought about that way. So, and then obviously was to network me as well and help people understand and help students who were listening understand the industry better. But that my learning has just exponentially, you know, increased tenfold over the last couple of years. So
Mike Hills, to be fair, just like touch on him for a second. He's been really helpful for me, because so my friend, this is one thing, speaking to people, making friends. One of a good friend, Kieran Goodson, linked me Mike Hill's talk. He was talking about storytelling and visual metaphors. He did like
was it the Terminator talk?
No, he did. It's a 3-part one. He did Batman. And then he mentioned Star Wars, and then like Jurassic Park.
Oh, right. One of his recent stuff, probably, yeah.
But so I've always been like really interested in psychoanalytic thinking anyway. You know, I've been to see like Jordan Peterson live. I read up on a lot of like Carl Jung's ideas and all this kind of stuff. But to hear him like really sort of put it all into context was really useful for me. So I'm planning my next scene now, and I'm like really focusing on all the sort of visual metaphors and visual storytelling and subconscious ideas, and it all came from him, like, because he just put it into context so well.
He's good at just. I mean, when I first went, my first industry event was 2016. It was industry workshops in London, and Mike, I never knew who he was at the time, but everyone was like, his talk will be the one to go to. And when I went to his talk, like the whole hall was like full. There was people standing outside. Yeah. And it was his talk on Terminator 2, on basically how the story arc of the hero's journey exists within James Cameron's work. And I've watched that like so many times now, and the way he breaks down that process, even the way now he explains how Jurassic Park also is like one of the best storytelling methods, you know, of the whole character art as well. So the guy's just on another level. He's one of the guys in the industry that's just like everybody looks up to, and everybody has like such fond memories of like, oh, his first talk I went to, or I can remember the last time I spoke to him, he just blew my mind. And have you met Mike? Have you had a chance to speak to him?
No, I don't. So it's funny actually. I was having this conversation on Twitter. It's like I have done all of my networking and research and all that sort of stuff. It's all come out of my office. I haven't been to any of like these sort of networking events. My first networking event really was the DiNusty meetup, which I helped like co-host, and then like GDC this year, like that will be the first time I'm actually going to networking events. So
Oh
all the
wow!
people I know and all the stuff I've like, all the people I've spoken to has just come from speaking to them on the internet, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I've never done the whole. No, I didn't ever see the need to, like, if I could speak to them on Discord or Skype or LinkedIn or whatever it might be, I can get as much value out of it from there than I can, spend the money going to the events. And also, like, I wasn't in the position. I was super busy.
Yeah,
I didn't really have the chance to sort of slow down,
to go
stop, and
away.
go to the events.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was lucky. I was at uni at the time, and I think I was watching Anna Hollenreich on Twitch, and she had mentioned she was going to industry workshops. But then from there, I learned about stuff like IMAG in Paris, Trojan Horse, like loads of stuff I've been to now over the last couple of years. Even last year in September, I went to Lightbox in LA, and got to visit the guys out there, and go visit Riot Studios and Blizzard, and meet the guys at Sony. So like that's been really interesting, just getting one-to-one time with people. But yeah, like I've only recently discovered Discord, like because I discovered DiNusty and Experience Points, and the community I've actually started building in there are just people like regularly knowing your name, or when you come back in, they're like talking to you how your projects are getting on. Like it's something I've been looking for ages, because when I left university, I've felt like the last year it's been such a lonely and harrowing experience, because you're kind of thrown into the wild, expecting to be able to walk into an industry job as soon as you land. But then for a lot of people, that landscape is quite hostile, because so much of it has to be self-learning and self-motivation, where a lot of people, when I came from, my understanding going back into uni was that a lot of the things that uni would teach me would prepare me for a job, as in most careers. But then, of course, with games, it's very not the case.
Yeah, I have thoughts on how universities do things.
So do I.
I
nothing super positive sometimes.
Well, I
So
think there
yeah,
is also I spoke
yeah.
at the time.
There's pros and cons to both of them, I think.
Yeah, but there is something I have spoken at length with some of my close friends about the whole. You finish uni, there's still like a good couple of years normally between finishing uni and actually getting into the industry. Like, I think it's a very small minority who are finishing uni and then walking straight into a job.
Yep.
They are in the minority. But
Yep.
there's plenty of people who like they finish uni and then they've got like another 2-3 years of development, because you have to wait for the right opportunity to come along. You have to be in the right place in your life to do it. So yeah, that is something I've spoken. I do a bit of mentoring on the side, and I speak to a lot of students or people who are post students, like postgrads, and they're like super down on themselves. They're like, "Oh God, I didn't get, I haven't got a job when I've been out of uni for a year." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's normal, dude. Like, why don't
Guilty.
beat yourself up on it, man? Like it's so there's so much, like, this industry is so, I don't want to say fragile, but it's jobs come and go so quickly, and you have to, it's literally spur of the moment, and a lot of it's down to knowing people. Like, all the opportunities I've had over the past 3-4 years has been from, not from me applying, it's been from me knowing somebody, building a relationship, and also my work being in a place where they like it. But
Yep.
I think, yeah, I it's something I talk about quite a lot. It's a long haul game, and people seem to compare themselves to everyone else. And like, you are in a rat race, but you're in a rat race for yourself, man. Like I said, because the thing is, well, when these students start beating themselves up about it, they're like, I'm kind of like, well, you need to have this positive energy to what you're doing, because otherwise you won't enjoy what you're doing, and you put yourself under pressure, and then you don't finish your projects, and it's like, it's bizarre to me. I didn't go university. I had a bad experience with college. I basically was at college, and my lecturer was like trying to get everybody to play Call of Duty during our final assessments, and like he convinced us all to use UDK for like our final major project. And then we're like, "Oh, dude, we're having trouble with this." With how to do this, he's like, I don't know, and he just put the Alien trilogy on the screen and watch it, and we're like, so I basically, that was my impression of like higher education. So I was like, screw this, I self-taught myself through college, I'll self-teach myself into industry.
Oh, well done. Yeah.
Well, you say that, up to the ages 22, I was very jaded. I was an arrogant little shit. I thought I was like, slamming the industry, like, oh, I can't believe I'm not getting the job I want, because I was self-taught, I was doing like mobile games, serious games, VR, AR, not AAA, for the first few years. And it's like, I was getting pissy. I was like, why am I not getting a job, man? Like, I can model, I can make these things. These guys, people are posting on ArtStation. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it weren't until I joined the DiNusty community, really. I feel I was probably about 23.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing Jeremy, who's the senior environment artist at Massive, streaming
Mm-hmm.
himself learning Unreal and himself learning Unity. And I'm like, oh shit, this guy's got like over 10 years experience and he's still learning and he's still humbling
Yeah.
himself. And I was like, okay, that was a big slap in the face for me that I need to wake up and be humble and learn stuff. And also just speak to people in the community. I was like, I put all the senior artists on a pedestal, and anyone below that, this is like when I was younger, I put them like that their opinion weren't valid or something. And then you're
Yeah.
speaking in the Discord, and you're seeing juniors or people who are students as well, like make seriously valid points of really good observations. And I'm like, actually, yeah, these guys have something to offer me. Is I don't need to just only speak to seniors and leads and principals. These guys have something to offer to me. And that was just a big wake up call. Like from then on, I was just sort of like, okay, I need to seriously humble myself because there are students producing better work than me.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing about this industry is that seniors now, I know in studios, are seriously looking at junior stuff and being like, oh, how did you do that? Or like, can you show me how to use that software? Like, because the guys who are now hungry for it, who are just like trying to get a job, will have backfilled their software and learning requirements way over what they actually probably need. So when they come into studios, everyone's like, holy shit, you can also draw, or you can do this, or you can use this piece of software. So yeah, like it's nowhere. I mean, when I left my job, the worst thing about my job was that the guys because I was an engineer for the railway, Network Rail, but then the guys who'd been in the job like 30 years, when you try to do anything differently or do anything with like a new perspective, they were like no, we've done this way for 30 years, why would we change? And that was basically the way I was taught, like seniority worked in most companies, is that I didn't have a voice. I wasn't allowed to have a voice because I was young. So that's what obviously disheartened me with the industry and made me feel isolated all the time, and why I got depressed in my job and why I left. But then, of course, now in this industry, it's the complete opposite, right? Seniors are so much more able to like open their mind and be like, oh, but why do you think like that? Like, I mean, I use this example a lot, but when I met Raphael Grizzetti, like at THU, like in 2018, we just started, chatting and shooting the shit. But then, it's grew into an actual friendship now. And, Raphael is like a lead, character, or like an art director now at Sony Santa Monica working on God of War. I'm like, why does he talk to me? Like, why does he even care who I am? But like, the guy is so humble, it's ridiculous. He has time for everybody. And like, I'm thankful that, the guy talks to me, but like, even that, the stuff he's taught me, or the opportunities he's given me the last year to work with him, like, I would have thought that would have never happened, back in the day in any other industry. But because he's just such a nice guy, like, he just opens his doors to people because he wants other people to help and other people to grow.
Yeah, I think there's something to be. I don't know. I feel like people do have this perception that the big names in the industry, and this goes for like life, business, careers. People seem to think the successful like just want to hoard their knowledge or hoard their wealth or whatever it might be. And I mean, I'm sort of in this position now where I'm like finding young artists and bringing them into like the likes of Dekogon, or like just talking to them and mentoring people. There's no bigger pleasure than like finding a young person with potential and giving them an opportunity and seeing them kill it. And then you're like, that's like a real pleasure in life. And I think most of the big names, you go through it, Raf Grisey, imagine the Tall Freaks of the world, all these kinds of guys, Josh Lynch with his mentorships. I imagine they're all the same. There is a huge delight in seeing young people take an opportunity and absolutely run with it. And I feel as if some people who are earlier in their career, or some people who are a bit jaded, are like, oh yeah, they're just up there doing their thing and they get all the opportunities and like screw them guys. And I'm like, no, they want to help everyone. Like they want to help young people realize their potential and do great things.
I mean, like, even the. Yeah, but I was going to say, like, I mean, one of the things I find, because I've done the podcast for so long now, like people actually emailing me saying that, like, oh, I wasn't going to, but now I'm going to college for art because of your podcast. Or like when I was out in LA, like people were like, oh, I recognize your voice. Oh shit, I listen to your podcast, and I was like floored. Like, why the fuck do these people know who I am? But then listening to them be like, oh yeah, man, like I was really down, but you know, like listening to your podcast every month gets me motivated. They want me to go back and do more work. Or there was a guy like posted on Instagram, he was driving from his new job in like, I think Texas to like Washington, but like all the way he was basically running through my entire back catalogue of podcasts. And you could hear me like on his radio while he was driving down like this highway in America. And it just floors me to think like I'm actually helping people in some way.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't have the podcast, like I actually think I would have gave up trying about a year ago, because I mean, I don't know, I maybe no would have, but I definitely know that the podcast gives me energy I can't get anywhere else, because I feel like even though I'm not getting a job, even though I'm still struggling to get in the industry, I feel like I'm still doing something positive that's related to the industry that's helping people.
I think it's also interesting, like it's amazing what a good conversation so I think conversation and talking is like absolutely vital to us developing as people. You know, you've got to talk about ideas, you've got to have the chance to express ideas and unpack ideas. And you know, you might be wrong, but the opportunity to actually talk about it and be wrong and then correct it is so helpful. And like there's been times where like I finish days at work, and so I record podcasts mostly on my Wednesday evenings and they go out Wednesday. And I'll sometimes like before the podcast, like I really can't be asked for this. Like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm starting to burn out and I don't need to do the podcast. And then I have the podcast and I'm like, I'm just rejuvenated. I'm just so happy at the end of it because I'm like, just had a really good conversation. I'm amped up again. And I'm like, it comes from just having healthy, good conversations with good people as well. Like when you give someone, I think people are just so interesting. Like I could speak to 50 environment artists back to back. Every single one of them will have a slightly different outlook on the world about art, about software, the way they tackle problems. And I'm like, people are just interested. And if you actually listen, like, what's that? There's an old phrase, like, there's no such thing as a boring person. Like, I can't remember what it is.
But then even where people have like grew up in different countries or speak different languages, like that also informs how they approach industry or learning as well. Because then even, you know, I had one person who was talking to me about an industry event and he was like, yeah, I'd really love to get into some of the softwares, but I really don't pick up as much because initially when I started learning, I couldn't speak English. And I was like, oh shit, I never thought about that as like a thing that would be a barrier for people, because like Raf's the same, like he's trying to do more lessons now in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, because down in Brazil there isn't like a lot of learning for industry stuff in that language, and a lot of kids who start can't speak English. So it's like, you know, these things, like we sometimes have the Western world first world problems, like, oh, you know, it's so hard to learn such and such and I've got to go through all these tutorials. But then I think a lot of us are lucky that like the bulk of learning in the industry is all based around English. So like even where you grow up can be a factor in this industry.
Yeah, I find it's funny with Dekogon, we have a couple of absolute beast Brazilian artists, and they're like, you know, young guys trying to grind to, you know, move on and do things. And it's kind of weird. It's amazing what happens when you're necessity driving. Yeah, like they need to do well because they're trying to get out of situations that they're in Brazil. And I'm like, it's very interesting to me just seeing these people who have necessity drive them, not just because they want to make art, like they need to do this because they need to move their lives forward.
They want to have a future.
I mean, like,
I mean, like I have the biggest first world problem is that, you know, my parents, you know, knew through any kind of badness in their life, but kind of set up this false wall where I was handed most things in my life when I wanted them. So I didn't really have to work towards much in my life. I always kind of had opportunities just given to me. So now the hardest bit is trying to rewire my brain into the fact that I really have to grind and struggle to get where I want to get to now in the industry. Like it's not just going to be handed to me. Because I've done so much networking now that like most people in the industry know my name or know of me, but then at the same time they don't know me because of my work, right? They just know me because of the podcast or because I was at an event or because I bumped into somebody and chatted with them. So the struggle now is I need to try and flip it where I've done enough socializing to last like a lifetime. Now I just need to grind and make my portfolio shine. That's the harder bit.
Yeah, so I'm from the other side of the spectrum. I mean, I grew up, so when I left college, I was still pursuing like professional rugby. So I was like doing professional rugby. I was also a labourer because rugby doesn't pay great. And then I was doing like, art in the evenings. I've always had a kind of ridiculous work ethic to the point where it is kind of, it sounds like it's like a flex, and it isn't, because I was explaining this to a couple of the guys in Discord. I'm like, yeah, I can't sit and relax and watch TV. Like I get aggravated. I have to go do something. I have to be working. And everyone's like, "Oh, you're so lucky that you have that mindset." I'm like, "Yeah, you want to try having a wife, and friends and relationships. Like it. That's the flip side. Everyone, like, it's very easy to look at people because, especially in Deco, I'm surrounded by people who are like me. Work ethic driven, workaholics, and it's like people like to go, "Oh, that's so easy. That's you got the easy life." I'm like, "Yeah, you want to try actually having friends and family and, like I said, a wife where you're not having this horrible relationship where you're working all the time. It's really, really difficult." And all of it's probably been bought, like, it's not so much been from my family. It's just come from, like, I left college and I was like, screw this, I'm going to teach myself. But while I'm teaching myself, I'm still want to sort of play professional rugby. And then it was like, actually, I need to pay my bills, so I need to get a job. Okay, I'll be a bricklayer because it's flexible. So that meant, like, I was very efficient with my time. It does kind of also mean I'm kind of hard on my mentees, like when I go to do university talks and people say, "Oh, I don't have time." I'm like, that's complete bullshit. Like, I'm sorry, here's my schedule. Tell me you don't have time. Like, I actually changed my sleeping pattern to basically allow me to, like, so I did it like a time diary, and I was like, how am I spend my week? And I was sleeping for about 8 hours a day. And I was like, that's 3 hours a day, I could make that back and get like 20 hours back a week. So I basically like trained myself to work myself down to 5 hours of sleep.
Wow.
And that was just to have more time to do work or do, because I was like doing gym and stuff like that as well. But saying that, I'm now starting to relax a little bit. So I've recently started Our Station. It's 5 days work from home. There's a bit more flexibility. Obviously, Deco as well, really flexible. So I'm like, okay, I'll give myself 6 hours sleep now, or maybe 6.5. So I'm starting to relax a little bit. But yeah, it's amazing. It's weird because it is like it. Everyone has their like challenges. Like you said, you have yours. You said, although it's like a blessing, a curse in disguise. Like,
it's totally first world problems. Like, like, I had parents that gave me everything I wanted.
It makes you difficulties later on. And same with me. Like, oh yeah, I'll work all the time. Yeah, but it's downside. It's like there's ups and downs to everything.
Of course,
But people like to only focus on the ups and they forget about everyone has downsides.
Yes, yeah. Like, I mean, people would say that, like, oh, boo-hoo, poor rich white kid. But like at the same time, that has been a challenge for me because I want to work in this industry and I want to work hard. But then, like, I've never really had a work ethic instilled in me, and because things have been handed to me, I've not had to work hard for them. So, like, even when I went to do mentorship at Access, like, I felt like I was crawling at like a snail's pace, and everybody was like sprinting past me constantly, and everybody was so professional and so dedicated to the work, and I was sitting like on the laptop, like, cool, so what do I do now? Like, when most people would be hungry to, like, they would go find things to do, I was constantly saying to the guys at the office, like, cool, I've done this, what do you want me to do now? Is there something else I should be doing? You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to like most normal people who would be like, right, well, what can I do next? How can I expand on that task? How can I do that to the nth or best of my ability? Like, even the thing I didn't learn for years was, like, remember Alex Heath sitting down and talking to me about it, and like it blew my fucking mind. And it was like, when you get a job to do, never mind it, but like, that's paying your fucking bills. Never mind that could be an opportunity to get a job or impress somebody. Like, you should be looking at every task you sit down and do to be doing that to the absolute best of your ability, because you want that to be associated with your name and you want that work to be an example of what you can achieve as a person. But most people just sit down and do a task and it's like, oh, that's good enough. Like, for years it was like, that's good enough, that'll pass, that's like a B, whatever, just fling it in. You know what I mean? Like, I never sat and actually thought of the professional mindset of like, right, this is an opportunity. If I do this really well, I can impress people, I could show them that I can take a task and finish it. And you know what I mean? Like, that thinking was never in my brain, which I totally fucking hated, but like, it was something I had to learn the hard way. And I think it's also a mindset a lot of students have as well, is that like, everything they hand in at university, it's like, that's good enough, that'll do, like, that'll do, like, that'll pass, that's what they wanted, I've done the bare minimum. Do you feel like that's something as well that you come across a lot?
I flip it. I'm far more selfish with it. I'm kind of like, every task and opportunity is an opportunity to learn. It's something for me.
Oh, no, you. Like, I know you're fucking awesome. Like,
but people come across that, and the issue is, it's mindset. It's always mindset. And people need to, like, the mindset's all to get the same outcome, is to do a good task. But people have trouble, I feel like, framing it in a way which works for them. So like I said, For you, it was being framed in a way where you're going to impress people and going to get opportunities because you're going to have good work associated with you. For me, I'm like, I frame it as, what do I get out of this? Okay, if I do this, like, say for example, I get given a really boring prop to make. I'm like, okay, it's a boring prop, and I could just make this boring prop and be done. But I could also stretch my understanding and try new techniques to, like, so I can get something out of this boring prop and I learn something, and then I get amped up to do this well because I'm going to learn something. Now, the issue is, this is what I say at the end of all my uni talks, and I think it's the big problem people have is successful people bargain with the future. Like, that's why they're successful. They're willing to sacrifice the now for the future. They're willing to sacrifice that extra hour of work now so the project at the end looks way better. They're willing to sacrifice that evening of games so that they have like X amount of hours topped up later. Because you imagine if there's like two people, one is doing their 9 to 5 and the other is doing their 9 to 5, but they're doing an extra 2 hours every night on that 9 to 5. In a year, they're 2 hours times like 365 days in a year, you're over 700 hours ahead of the other person because they're sacrificing the now for the future. And it's hard as well because there's also another thing with, and this is a big issue with Deco, is not like, this is something my art director, my previous job, told me, is like, art's never finished. You work art over and over and over and over and keep working into it and keep working into it and keep working into it. So although there is too much of that will do, there is also something to be said for, I'm done. This is done. This has achieved my task. And I've just released an article for Experience Points for my Cerberus scene, which illustrates this quite clearly. Is I set a load of tasks at the very beginning. I wanted to replicate a piece of concept art. I wanted to capture the mood. I wanted to make this particular shader. And then it was like, I got to the point where I was finishing, and I had a bunch of feedback. People were like, "Oh, it'd be cool if you like made this basement to it," or like, "It'd be cool if it did this," or "It'd be cool if it did that." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool. They are good ideas, but I have my tasks, and I pretty much finished them, so I'm gonna call this piece done. I could do more into this. I could make this project last me a year, but I'm not. I've got my stuff, and I'm gonna say I'm done because I can go through all my pieces. Although I like all of the art I've produced. Like, I think everyone likes their own art. I'm like. I could do more with all of them. I could have learned Houdini and done some procedural tech. I could have learned this XYZ to make the scene better. I could have spent more time on particular elements. But then I never finished the projects. And then, so it's the flip side to that. It's like, there's this nice little middle ground, like, of not just saying that will do, because that will do is an awful mindset, but also not trying to make everything either a hero prop or not making everything last forever. Like, have tangible criteria for success and failure. Here's my tasks, XYZ, and this is my failure. And then, your failure is behind you then, chasing you, and your goals in front of you. And it's like, it's a really good, healthy mindset to be in.
Yeah, I think as long as you feel like you've learned the thing you wanted to set out and learn, then you've accomplished that goal. I think, like you said, there's a difference between that's good enough or like, I'm done with this task. That definitely, like, because more my mindset initially in the beginning of my career and students I've met is definitely like, that's good enough, but it's no being like, that's done. So yeah, which is awesome. And then, like, I mean, the Cerberus piece it wasn't one of the first thing I think I ever saw from you was the safe house. That was like the first thing I saw, but then the Cerberus thing was really awesome also because one of the first people I met in 2016 was Giles. Like, he's like such an awesome dude, and like, even back then when he was doing his talk at industry workshops, it was all about his IP he was developing called Ashen Falls, which is like the Silent Hill sequel that we're all wanting. But like, his work, I think, just inspires you to, because there's such mood, there's such heaviness, the atmosphere and the stuff he produces. So when you look at his work, you're almost tempted to be like, I need to make something for this because it just is drawing me in like so much. I mean, the fact that like his profile picture in ArtStation just now is James from Silent Hill 2, like, speaks volumes. But like, yeah, like, his work definitely over the years has been people I know have looked and seen like, that's an opportunity for me to make something in 3D that will be tangible, because he's always talking about his Ashen stuff, wishing people would do stuff with that because he was trying to get that off the floor for so long. But like, yeah, the Cerberus stuff was so well done. Like, even just, looking at that objectively, you could
almost
not tell the difference between that and Gail's work. It was so almost one to one.
I have mixed feelings about it. Don't get me wrong. I it was fun to work on, and like it originally came from I wanted to, all my previous work I sort of just designed on the fly. I had some initial ideas, but a lot of it was designed on the fly. And I forget who I had this conversation with, but basically they're like, you realize, in AAA, you get your art director and creative director and a concept artist spend like months, years designing the mood of the scene and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, as an environment artist, you want to get the habit down of being able to capture a mood in 3D space. So that's what it came from. I was like, okay, I'm going to stick so religiously to this concept so that I am just capturing the essence of the concept in 3D. And if I replicate that, I'm happy. Like, that's all I care about. Now, it's I'm so conflicted because I get comments on it and they're like, love the color palette, I love the composition, I love the mood. And I'm like, yeah, that isn't me. None of that's me. Like the color palette, the lighting, that's all Giles. Like he designed that, he made that. So like, thank you. I'm glad you like it, but he's the mastermind behind that. I'm conflicted because it's my piece with the most likes, and I'm like, yeah, but the thing people like isn't me. So I'm conflicted on that piece. I'm a bit like, I feel almost like a cop out, but I'm getting credit I don't deserve for that piece.
I mean, I think that's where people will see 3D artists, environment artists especially, because people have even talked to me about this, where they want to go in the industry and be a 3D environment artist, but feel like they'd be stuck creatively because they're just basically fulfilling other people's visions. But then I think there is an expression of skills where, like, even you, I mean, like, your material work is really inspiring. Like, that's one of the I mean, people probably know you best for, and like you said, you don't want to be defined by, I'm a material artist because you're swirling your career, but like, that I think is one of the few really creative paths you can have as an environment artist, or one of the best forms of self-expression. I don't know if you agree, but
I'll be honest, I don't. Only because in some studios, yes, you are hamstrung, because at the end of the day, you are creating a game and there is a vision and you're executing someone's vision. However, speaking to so many people, I hear too much where the freedom some people. I'm hearing like horror stories where people are like, oh, I'm just being told to make this really bad concept, which I don't agree with professionally, and I think it's bad, but I still want to make it. And I'm like, I sympathize with that. But then I hear people who are like, oh yeah, I've been given like my freedom to this. I'm just going to build this level, and as long as it's in line with the art director's vision, like I have autonomy to do what I want. So it swings and roundabouts. There's good and bad. Like there will be times where you're doing stuff and you're just like, I don't like what I'm making, but I've got to make it because that's what's needed. And there are obviously studios where you have very little autonomy because there is just a task and the task needs doing. But I also hear the flip side where, Ubisoft's great for this because their environment artists are more like world builders. And they are given far more autonomy in building these worlds. And, as long as it falls in line with the design and the scope of the game, they get given that autonomy to design these spaces. So I
think it swings and roundabouts with also how you perceive a professional mentality, because I know recently, I forget the girl's name specifically, but there was a video just came out about a girl who had quit her job at Disney because of the animation constraints she was under while she was at the studio. Like the things she thought, or the expectations she had for the job didn't meet the reality, so therefore she wanted to leave. And there's a whole, it's like one of the most divisive videos I've ever seen, because there's such a divide. There's like people who are like, I've had similar experiences and you should never stay in a job where you get made to feel like shit, which is, I'm totally behind that. But also people who are professionals who are like, it's a job, it's an industry, you're there to do work, like, what did she expect? So, it's also the mentality I've seen, the 50-50 split in students, where people are like, oh yeah, we'll get to run about the office all day with Nerf guns and like shoot each other and like, play Call of Duty. But then people are like, well, no, it's a job. You're going there to work from 9 o'clock till 5, and your art director is going to expect to see results at the end of the day. So
this is where me as a person, I have flaws. I expect people to take things as seriously as I take things and work as hard as I work, and that isn't fair. Everyone's not the same. People have different paces. But there's a certain level of and I'm probably going to get some heat for saying this. In recruitment and when we in past studios I worked at, the majority, anyone I hired who had some experience, or like didn't go to university, were self-taught, or they've been around the block a bit, had no issues with their work ethics. They get it. It was university students, not all, but university students were the ones who there's like this level of entitlement. There's a level of hand holding which could be very frustrating. Because it's like, oh yeah, I know everything. I've been to university, got a degree, and I know what I need to do. And I'm like, yeah, no, every studio does things differently. Like, you will not find a studio on a planet where they have the exact same pipeline from A to B, because games are complicated and there's ways to solve problems which is unique to the studio. That's why studios are so secretive about how they make shit, because they have some really clever ways to solve problems. Now, the whole professional mindset it's so grey, because it's like what's making you feel like shit? The fact that you're not making your own thing and your own product, the way you're being treated, the fact that you're not being given autonomy. It's like there's some things that are okay and there's some things that aren't. So for me, if you're being belittled in your workplace, or like you're not being valued, and okay, actually backtrack. If you're being belittled in your workplace, it's not okay. I had this come up on Twitter in Discord. Someone's like, oh, I didn't feel valued. I'm like, define being valued. What do you want? Like, because what does that mean? Does that mean you get a pat on the back every time you do something good? Does it mean you're appreciated? What does that, give me some context of what that means to be valued. And
the dopamine release, right?
And when I speak to these people, it's like, oh, well, I don't know. I just want to feel valued. And I'm like, exactly. You don't know yourself. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, if you do really good work, you get rewarded. How you get rewarded, I don't know. Like, it changes. What's good work in one studio is average work in another. There's that. There's different bars of quality.
I mean, the validation really should be coming from within, right?
Well, yeah, you should. If you're happy with you, I'm the kind of person. I'm very binary. I couldn't give a fuck what everyone thinks about what I do. If someone says I hate the fact you copy guys' concept, I think you should have done it yourself. I'm like, cool, appreciate your opinion. I'm sticking to what I do. If you are happy with what you did, cool. You should always look internally. I always say this. You should look internally. Like, if you feel like you're not being validated, rather than be angry at the studio for the lack of your validation, like, look at yourself first. Like, have I actually done something that deserves to be validated? Like, that's where I always start. Like, I always look at, and obviously there comes times where, like, oh yeah, that guy's chummy with the boss, so therefore he gets lots of credit and I don't. And I have seen that. But that's different. That's nothing. That's an external factor taking place. I'm talking about, like, people who are like, I don't feel validated in my workplace. I'm like, you gotta. So what? Like, it's a job. Like, what do you want to do? To pat your back every time you do your work? Like, you're doing your job.
That's why personal projects are really a thing, right? Because then, if you want to get creatively validated, then you do that stuff outside of your work.
Well, that's why I've got respect as well for this. Like, guys like Mike Bithell out there, who's like, he does want to make his own shit. And he needs to be like, he wants to see his vision take form. I'm like, he quit. He makes his own shit. I'm like, yeah, fine. If you feel that strongly about it, go do it. But don't smack. I don't like the ideas. I hate seeing people smack talk universities or like studios for not meeting what they think it should be. Like, I get very frustrated at that, because to me, I said this, and there was someone very actively sort of smack talking the universities. And by the way, I have my beef with unis. However, when I see people do that, I'm kind of like, it's a reflection on you, not your studio, not your university. When I see people do that, I'm like, I have an opinion of you. I don't really care what you're saying about your university.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, because when we were at university, like, as much as I can say they didn't prepare us in certain aspects, like, they done the materials they had at hand, they done the best they could. And then, the guys who got, a class of 30 of us, one guy got a job in Axis, and me, I'm doing some freelance work, from different companies, but then everybody else is just went back to working, in a regular job or whatever. But yeah, like the lecturer did say to us, like, on day one, if you do just your university work and nothing else, you won't get a job.
It's like, I used to think that. I used to think, oh yeah, universities don't prepare the students. And then I'm seeing students who did shit their own time, and they're thriving now. They're really, making waves in the industry. And I'm like, it's because they took it upon themselves and did shit their own time. Like, people go, "Oh, university did prepare." And don't get me wrong, I think university does a bad job on staying up to date because it's hard to get current professionals
Yes.
to quit their professional job to be a lecturer. It's very difficult.
Yes, indeed.
However, students are like, "Oh, I didn't get a job because university didn't prep me for it." I'm like, well, "What did you do to prep yourself?" Like, and that's not, and I come across as harsh, and I've had people say to me like, "You're not very empathetic, are you?" And I'm like, "Not really, because I've had a tough time getting here, and so's everyone else. Everyone has a tough road. Why, what did you expect this to be easy?" It's the most.
You kind of make everybody like you, though. I mean, you're always going to, even in this industry, you're always going to come across people who won't like your attitude or won't like things that you do. But then, as long as you are like, like murdering people or like, assaulting anybody, like, then yeah, like you need to just get on with your work and just do your own thing. And hopefully at the end of the day, you attract people who are of the same mindset, and that's where you find your kind of niche group or your group. But then, like, I mean, I'm not saying like it has to be in extremes. Like, yeah, sure, you shouldn't have to handhold people at the job because, it's a job and you really should be there to do work. But at the same time, you also have an understanding that people are new to the industry or just in their first job, so they will be nervous or they will be a wee bit lost. So, initially the first couple of weeks, you might walk across the desk and be like, "Are you okay? Do you need any
Oh
help?"
yeah, for
Don't
sure.
ask
That's
anything.
like being
Yeah.
but this is what I mean. Like, people just don't apply common sense to the situation. Like, oh yeah, I don't
Yeah.
get value because no one said a word to me since I sat at my desk and I've been here for 3 weeks. I'm like, yeah, obviously that's not good. Like, really, we have
Yeah.
to. That's a discussion point. Like, that's not good.
Yeah.
But again, this comes back to workplaces as well. Like, I feel like the task in workplaces is easy to get caught up in the task of creating the product and forget that we are human beings. And again, I hold my hand up. I am really guilty of this, where I'm like, why have you not done the work? Why is the work not good? And it's like, people have shit going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And, I have a lot of admiration for there's Clinton Crumpler, and there's a guy in our, who's another lead at Dekogon, Javier. And seeing how they tackle problems with people, like people problems, like, someone was rude or like whatever. And their first reaction is to be like, okay, let's talk to the person, see if everything's okay in their lives. Like, is everything good? And I was blown away. I saw that and I was like, wow, my first reaction would have been to just go guns blazing,
What the
arguing.
fuck's happening? What are you doing?
Like, that's my gut reaction to things. And I saw them behave like that, and I was just full admiration. And I was like, this is what I mean. Like, there's swings and roundabouts. People think that you have to be super disagreeable and like combative to go further in your career. And I'm like, I see guys like Clinton and Javier, and I'm like, no, like, them being compassionate, understanding they're dealing with people. I was full of admiration. I was like, I need to develop that part of me, and that's something that I'm actively working on, to be conscious of.
It's the humbleness, right? It's the thing that makes you also, because humble is just being understanding that you're not amazing at everything, you don't have everything figured out, and there are other people in your world. So, like, like when you're humble, you're more like, I could blow up at this person, but maybe there is a reason. I mean, like, you can only do it so often also. So again, with the balance thing, there's like, right, initially you can be like, cool, what's happening? Is there anything I can do to help? But then if it just goes on and on and on, you've got to be like, well, look, this is a business. We can't realistically just keep hand-holding you the entire time. So, but then, like, initially, if people are having problems, it might be like, look, I'm really worried about this task, or I'm super nervous, I'm going to do a bad job. And then you can be like, oh, well, cool, look, we can walk through it, we'll be able to review it, if we at certain points, then I worry about it. So, I mean, like, I think it's just easing that mindset, because I have definitely been like way too hard on myself the last, year and a half, looking at like, oh, if I don't get a job in the next 6 months, I'm going to be a failure, or blah, like, it's just learning to understand that like the world is such a big scary place, and like if you're not quite making it, that's cool, because everybody struggles with it. So you're not alone in that fight, which is fine, because obviously you're talking about like all the mentees you talk to who are like, oh, I've left university and I've not got a job in 6 months. You're like, well, that's unrealistic to start with, but then also didn't like kill yourself, because then you'll just never make good work because you'll constantly be judging yourself. So
I think that
even that,
there's a weird thing someone's, and I mentioned this on I think I mentioned this on my own podcast, or I mentioned it in the Discord, is not having the same like, you not living by the expectations of you from 6 years ago. That was something someone said to me. Like, I was in a conflict. I had an opportunity to go to Playground Games, and then ArtStation came along. And ArtStation was an incredible opportunity. I was like it was a no-brainer. Like, that good an opportunity. And I was still like, do I want to do this? Like, because this I could have the opportunity to work at Playground, and it sat super weird with me. And I was talking to somebody, and like I said on when I spoke to my friends about this, I don't remember who it was. So I feel terrible. But just being able to let go of the expectations I had as me of a 23-year-old to me is now I'm now
Yeah.
26, and I'm like, okay, I'm okay with who I am today, and I'm okay with what I have achieved so far. Let's set new goals. Because for years, it's always AAA, 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 get ship title, get ship title. And
Yep.
I was so tunnel visioned on that when
Mhm.
great things came up in my life, like, originally with Dekogon, I was like, yeah, it's an outsourcing studio. I don't actually work on a project. I had that in my head. And like now I'm like, Jesus Christ, I've got a studio. Like the podcast I had with Hannah yesterday, I spent a lot of
Mhm.
it like just praising what a healthy workplace it is. I'm like, this is a great
Mhm.
opportunity. It's super flexible. They're super supportive. I've learned a ton. I've got like Art Station. I've got a podcast. I'm like, this is good. This is good. Like, why am I
Yeah.
getting? And it's because I was living to the expectations of me as a 23-year-old of where I should
Yeah.
be by X point. And
Yeah. Or I should be working at Epic Games, or should be working
exactly, and
here or there.
it
Or
wasn't until
yeah.
someone said that to me, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's really true. And I'm so much more. There's like a weight off my shoulders. Like now, I'm kind of
Yeah.
just thinking, I'm in a great situation. I've got a lot ahead of me. I've got a lot of development to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was just very. It just hit me like a brick wall and made a
Mhm.
big difference. It's just like reframing your expectations and not living to past expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely one where you have to definitely set your own goals of what is success to you.
Yeah,
Especially when, I think even for years and years I was like, oh, I really, really want to work at Blizzard, and I think that would be a dream for me and everything. But then as I've visited other studios and I've met other people from different walks of life, I'm like, oh yeah, that might be interesting, or I might really enjoy actually working at Riot as opposed to Blizzard. So I mean, there's definitely expectations where you're like, what is success to you? I mean, for some people, it's like, I just want to work in America at the biggest studio on earth and earn like a shit ton of money. Right, fair enough. If that's success to you, then totally fine. Like, go for it. Like, no worries. But then for some people, they're like, if I can just be creative and pay my bills, I'm happy. So, I mean, yeah, you're definitely going to measure like what is success, especially coming out of uni. Because if you walk out of uni like I did, when you're like, cool, I'm going to work in Blizzard in the next 5 years, like that's just so unrealistic. Like, you're almost just setting yourself up for failure. Like, I know I was. So yeah, like it's definitely a thing where you have to measure your output and be happy about where you are at each point in your career.
yeah. I have this I have this issue. Like I speak to my wife about this. It's like there's only one person. There's two people in my life who I'm like obliged, who I have obligations to, myself and her.
Yeah.
I need to make sure I provide and I do my job that we can pay our bills and we are happy
Hmm.
together. And myself, that I'm
Hmm.
happy. I have
Hmm.
zero obligations to like to. It sounds terrible to like say like Jeremy, who's like helped me so much with the podcast with DiNusty. It's like
Hmm.
I do what I want to do, and if I'm happy with what I'm doing, that's my mark for
Hmm.
success. But so many people get tied up in, oh yeah, but what if so and so doesn't like what I'm doing? What if this? What if my parents think I didn't do good? What if my friends think I didn't make it? What if this person I
Yeah.
don't even give a fuck about their opinion says a bad thing about me? Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to then just get paralyzed by all that, and I'm like, I just live by are you happy with what you're doing? No, then fix it. Yes, carry on doing it. Like,
Yeah.
and Charlotte who's my wife. I obviously have obligations to because she's my wife. We have a house together.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
I have obligations to her as a partner, not career wise. As long as I pay my bills, I could quit our station tomorrow and Deck are going to go be a bricklayer again. As long as I pay my bills,
Yeah.
I'm meeting my obligations. But then
Yes.
I have to also be happy. This is a really weird thing. Like, and Josh hit the nail on the head with this. Like, your
Hmm.
work affects your home life. When I'm really fatigued and tired because I've had like meetings all day or I've had stressful meetings,
Hmm.
with Charlotte, I might be more quiet. I might be a little bit short, less patient.
Yeah.
So there's that as well. There's that obligation that I'm making decisions that make us happy.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to go to CD Project Red when I was younger in Poland,
Hmm.
and she was just 100%. Even though I would have been really, really happy, she was like, "I don't really want to go, but we'll go. I'll follow you." And
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? No, because she don't want to go, and this is we're in this together. Like,
yeah,
I can't just make decisions that are good for me because then she's sad or like not as happy, and therefore I'm not as happy because our relationship isn't as good. And in my learning course, I really hit about this, that our careers and our lifestyles are very tough, like on family and relationships, because
right,
sometimes you might have to up sticks, you might have to move to different countries, you have to work long hours, you have crunch, you have personal development. Like, these things are all things that take time away from your family and from your home.
yeah,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so I think there's a bit of transparency there, that or it's not just about the end product of art and what you're doing, it's how it affects your life. Because end of the day, this is a job. Making art is a job.
yeah,
Like, it's so you can live, it's so you can pay your bills. And if you can fulfill a little bit of yourself while you're doing it, fantastic. More credit to you. But
yeah,
you still have got the rest of your life to consider. And like I said, it's something I struggle with home life balance, because I just want to work all the time. And like, as much as me and Charlotte bicker, like, how about this? Like, you work too much, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to just watch TV. It's like, I'm the balance to
mm,
her, and she's the balance to me. Like, we're both opposite ends of the
yeah,
spectrum.
yeah.
But she's the one who like
I mean,
brings that sort of, you need to just chill for a bit, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll chill. And I'm like, I know I need to work for a bit, and then she's like, maybe we
yeah,
do.
I think it's definitely something you have to take it and say. I mean, like, we've all came across it, especially the last 3 years the last year, I'm with my now current partner, Diane, but 3 years previous to that, I was on my own when I was going through uni. So, when I left, I didn't really have to consider like what my other half was going to think about me moving somewhere or taking a job elsewhere, or even just trying to slow down or no do work and pay attention to them as well. It's like it's such a balance you've got to really get in control, and I think partners have a way of doing that that's really interesting. Again, using Raphael as an example, even before he got into like his major role into Sony and stuff, like he was just constantly working, and then eventually he met his now wife, and they had a kid. So when that all kind of came in a kind of one fell swoop, that was a whole thing where he was like, yeah, I need to try and look at there's more to life than just working. There also is family. So it's a constant struggle, also because this is one of the few industries in the world where like you can't really switch off when you come home at night. Like, you're always thinking about the next project, the next piece of software, the next whatever. Whereas, if you're a bricklayer, to an extent, you can do your job and come home
Yeah.
and then switch off. Like, you don't have to think about like what I'm doing the next day or the new bricklaying technique. Once you've learned your craft, you're kind of at a point where you can do the job without having to really add any extra learning on. But then with this industry,
Well, no,
you never stop learning.
that's the difference between a career and a job. And
Yes,
careers
yeah,
are not necessarily a blessing. People all get hung up on careers. I'm like, really? You want a career? Because that's what you do all the time.
yeah.
And I mean, as well, I've been drilling myself with this. That I'm going to grind my face off through my 20s
Mm-hmm.
and reassess in my 30s and see where I'm at. I've still, like,
Right.
to me, my 20s, I'm still a kid. Like, you're still a kid up until like you're at the age of 30. You're still developing as a person, still trying to find your feet as a person.
Yeah, I'm fucked.
Let me get my point. Like, from 22 year me to like now,
Yeah,
I've matured a lot. My whole like outlook on life has changed a lot, and
yeah,
I know that probably between 26 and 30, it's going to change a whole lot more.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, yeah, I'll grind my face off now, but I know I need to. I can't keep this up my whole life because like family comes into it. Like I said, I mean, we have a dog, but
yeah,
when you get down to like kids, it's like, so this is the big thing for me. It's like kids is when you are no longer priority in your life. Something
yeah,
else takes priority. Um,
yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like there's a glass ceiling you can hit where you get to a point where like any more input is just going to burn you out. But like, I do know people still now who are like in their 40s and still grinding. I mean, I think in a sense, if you're that way now, you'll always kind of be that way. I don't think it's something you can
no, I think
unlearn.
I'll always have a
Maybe,
work ethic, but I think there's an element of
yeah,
saying, you know what, so at the moment I'm doing, wait, 16, 17 hours days of like
mm-hmm,
work. That's not including personal projects. I know,
yeah,
Charlotte will not be with me in 10 years if I keep doing that. I know I can't, whenever we have kids, I can't be a good father if I'm doing 16-hour
yeah,
days. Like, I might still
Of
do a
course,
lot
yeah.
of hours. I might still do like 10 hours. I might still do 12 hours, but I know I'd need to be back
Yeah,
to step.
yeah, definitely.
But that means while I'm still in this situation, I'm going to be grinding my face off and keep doing everything I can
Yeah.
because, you know, it's not going to last forever.
Yes.
And I think people, students especially,
Hmm.
don't appreciate that longevity to their careers. They sort of think,
Yeah,
I need to get it now. And that's like, there's now. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, your whole first 10 years is like, you're still learning. Your second 10 years,
yeah,
you're like, you know, doing whatever. You're starting to get comfortable. You're finding your feet and actually having a life. So, you know, third 10 years is like, okay, I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor.
yeah,
People, I keep saying people, it's because most of the experienced artists I've met have a pretty firm grasp on this.
yeah,
But yeah, I just feel like there's an urgency to when all this, the mentees I speak to, I'm like, there's such an urgency, which I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it, I love it. I'm like, yeah, get it while it's going good. But
yeah.
bearing in mind, you haven't got to beat yourself up and kill yourself to get somewhere that you'll get there comfortably in 3 years rather than, you know, burning out after one.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Raphael's hit that sweet spot now in Sony where he's still super busy, but like he's not as intense as he was like 10 years ago. So yeah, he grinded from like, 16 to 30 probably.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he's getting to like take his foot off the gas slightly. And like I say, slightly. So what I was saying about that, the way you'll probably be the same way, years from now, I think that is the case. But then, like you said, it's a softer version. Like you still will want to work hard, but then it's not going to be like the now where, you're calculating if you can get 4 hours of sleep instead of 5. Like, you're probably not getting any sleep anyway when you have kids. But at the same time, you'll want to lessen it, but it's still like probably more than somebody would do in their 30s at a job. Like, most people get to their 30s in an industry and they're like, all right, well, I'm comfortable where I am. I know where I fit in and I don't want to, move outside of my comfort zone too much. But then, like, I think the uncomfortableness of parts of the industry is what makes you thrive, right? It's when you're uncomfortable, you feel like
Well,
you're
you're in the zone
progressing.
of, oh god, what's it called? Zone of proximal development. That's what, when you say you're in the
Right.
zone, it's when you're learning something new, but you're reaching the sort of expectations of what you're trying to make. So if you're learning a new piece of software and it's actually
Mm-hmm.
working, that's when you
Mm-hmm.
feel the best. You're in the zone, and that's the zone of proximal development. But
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a mindset, like you said, right? Something you've got to try and keep with you as you go through.
I mean, it depends on how
Yeah.
you view things. Like, there's something that, God, he's audacious and he's a man, my character, but like someone like Gary Vee, I know he's not
Mm-hmm.
everyone's
Oh
cup of
God,
tea,
yeah.
but it's what he
My
said.
hero, man.
Right, well, it's what he said about legacy. And
Yeah.
recently, it's probably as I get like messages, people saying, "Hey, I know you'll probably resonate with this, but it's like the stuff you're doing is really useful to me. Like, it's really helped my well-being, my career. You're making a big impact on my life, all this sort of stuff." I'm like, you're actually leaving a legacy. People know you for a really positive thing, and not just your art. Like, me as a person is helping people. Same with you with your podcast. Like, you as a person are helping people, and
Mm.
same for like likes of Tim Simpson, where he's doing his YouTube content, his learning content. Josh Lynch with the Mentor Coalition. You're
Yeah.
leaving a real, Jeremy with DiNusty. You leave a real legacy, and
Mm.
people remember you for really good reasons. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, I've been doing this for a year and I'm getting this sort of feedback. I'm like, if I can scale this and keep being me and keep doing what I'm doing, by the
Mhm.
time I get to 40, I like to hope I've helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because also like going back to that sort of the mindset stuff, like past mindsets. My mindset at 22 was basically, my goal for my 20s is to be a senior artist and spend my 20s being a senior artist. And then my goal for my
Mhm.
30s will be being a lead artist. And then my goal for my 40s will be getting to some sort of director role. Well, that's
Mhm.
sort of been thrown up in the air already with like ArtStation and Deco. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
what are my goals? And like and I look back and I'm like, they're ridiculous goals. Like, they're such arbitrary nonsense. Like, your value is not based on your title. I know some artists who are mid-tier artists, like mid-level, who are some of the best
Mhm.
artists I know. They don't need to
Yeah.
be senior leads or principals to like validate them as an artist.
Yeah,
So, like, that
definitely.
mindset thing, like recently I'm caring a lot more about how I'm impacting people. The art is for me, like that's the selfish thing. The art and actually the podcast is for me. It's for me to grow as a person.
Yeah.
But whatever I leave behind, like, how the podcasts help people, how any learning content I make helps people,
Mm-hmm.
is becoming more and more important to me. And
Yeah.
just, hey, my piece got 1,000 likes. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I think it's definitely one of these things where you have to, again, we talked about it earlier, what is your measurement of success? What is something that you feel is like a milestone that is personal to you and, fills in the blanks of, I want to be XYZ human or do this thing by this time. But then, like you said, you had the expectations of, I want to do this and I want to do this. But now that has changed as the years went on. You've seen it move and flow. And now you're in a place where, you never thought you would be maybe 3 years ago. But now 3 years later, you're happy in that place. So, yeah, I think it comes down to personal development and just being happy about your milestones and setting your own expectations, which I think is admirable for an artist, especially when we know how hostile this industry can be. I mean, like, I'm not saying like it's, we're not trying to paint it as a place where it's a bad place to work, but then, yourself in studios and working for leads and art directors, it's intense. There's a lot to
That's the word
learn.
I
It's
use,
quite fast
intense.
paced.
It's full on.
Yeah. Yeah, full on. So, but then that's also because of the way, like, the film industry has changed as well, because there's so much emphasis on production now and how quickly they have to turn things over.
Yeah.
It's a thing with games as well. I mean, you think that 5 years is a long time to develop a game. For a lot of people, it's not enough. They'd rather have 10. So, I mean, like, these things, these deadlines that you put in place, they're all arbitrary to the person that's in the actual, the situation at the time. So, I think it's just as long as you have a really good mindset and you have a really good attitude and you try to stay as positive as you can be. You've got to be smiling all the time, but try and at least think about like the good things that are coming to you rather than the bad things. Then I think you'll survive. I think you'll do well in the industry, and I think you're living proof of that, right? Because you even go to uni, right? You just taught yourself. So, I mean, an attitude and a mindset like that, and anybody can prove really good to have awesome results. So, yeah, I think you're a good example for most people to aspire to. So, yeah,
Sorry
man.
about that. I'm an asshole when you meet me in real life.
Nah, man, I'm sure you'll be fine. Just quickly before we zone out, I'm just wondering, because maybe it's the lefty in me, but how did you feel you grew by experiencing Jordan Peterson's work? Because I've heard recently, actually, he's not very well. He's actually doing really badly.
Yeah, he's
And people have mixed opinions about him, is what I mean, and I just wonder how that grew you as a person and an artist.
he had a big impact on my life. I don't really care for the political stuff. A lot of people who are like, he's a transphobic, bigger, blah 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 blah, insult.
Yeah.
If you watch any of his
Mhm.
content, he is not. He's like, he appreciates, he supports trans communities. He just has a big thing on language because he has such a great understanding of like how the Stalinism and like communist Russia came about.
Yeah.
He has
Mhm.
he's a very smart guy. His impact
Yeah.
stuff, the stuff he talks about is self-help stuff. Like, people who slam him, I'm like, you're slamming someone trying to do like self-help. The stuff we take
Yeah.
responsibility. The biggest thing he said, and it's something that I've lived by, was in his book 12 Rules for Life, there's one which is be the reliable one at your father's funeral. And
Mm.
I'm like, that for me is so important. Be the reliable one when it's a fire. Like, we've had some tragedy in our life, and
Mhm.
to me, it was the most important thing was to be there for everyone else. And by me being there for
Yeah.
everyone else's experience was a little bit more bearable. Um,
Yeah.
he helped me understand, like, for a long time, I thought it was an issue, my mindset and the way I was. And then
Mhm.
watched his Toronto lectures on
Mhm.
um, the conscientious mentality and like big five traits. And I was like, okay, I actually understand myself a little bit more. What he
Yeah.
thinks, like, a lot of the understanding of how I conduct a podcast came from the way he talks about conversations and thinking and talking. Like,
Mm.
it helped me just round out my thinking as a person. And I don't agree with everything he says. There's some things I don't stand on. He
Yeah.
it's also how he rationalizes things. Like, he talk because he talks about like religion. And
Mhm.
at first I was like, I don't care for his religious talks. And I listened to his religious talks, and actually they're just explaining stories. That's all they're doing. He doesn't Bible preach. He isn't that type of religious person. He just sees the value in the metaphors and the stories in religious texts, and he abstracts them and explains them in real world scenarios.
Yeah.
And also he explained a lot of. He helped me understand the way people behave in social media. He did a talk where he's talking about why he doesn't like to say he believes in God. He's about there's something about it where it's kind of it's saying you're a good person, because if you believe in God, you believe someone's watching you all the time, which means you are acting in a forthright manner the whole way through. Like this, and there's a verse in there which he mentions, which Jesus says, "Don't call me good. The only person as good is God," and about not praying in public. So, and he linked all of that back to like the way people behave in the social sphere. They like to tell everyone they're a good person, like to say all the good things they do, more from the sort of the social side, the socialism side. There's that aspect, and he didn't particularly like it because he drew the comparison back to religious messages like, don't pray in public. It's a very private thing. It's about you and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, when someone gives change to a homeless person, but then they take a photo of them doing it, and you're not giving change because you want to give change. You want to do it for the admiration. You're not a good person. You're just doing it for the likes. There's a lot of that sort of stuff he helped me sort of just wrap my head around a bit. I give very. I was quite disheartened when I heard, because he's not very well. His wife had a very serious condition, and he was on antidepressants, and then he got addicted. He then checked it, and I mean, I still think this is an admirable thing. He checked himself into rehab because he knew it was an issue, and he has all his autoimmune conditions. But then I hear like people say very, very just awful things on social media, and I'm like, you're the people who claim to be the good people. This is what I get at. I'm like, you're the ones who claim to be the sort of the lefty good person, caring, and you're saying some horrific things on social media. It's very disheartening.
I definitely felt like when I went through uni and interacted with a younger generation and people who were, just coming up and different from my age, and I think people can take, it's more like it's 1 or 0 now. Like there's such extreme views. You're either left or right? But then I think as I've got older and looked at different parts of the world, is that you can take different things from different walks of life, but then also inform your own opinions. Because I mean, there was a journalist that I really respected years ago, Jeremy Ensign, and he was talking about, when he went to interview like murderers and serial rapists and child killers and Nazi sympathizers, it was like people would automatically write them off and say these people are like the scum of the earth and they're terrible people and blah blah. I mean, like obviously they are, they've committed these crimes, whatever. But then he was like, when you still sit down and interview them and talk to them, you can start to understand, like, okay, I know you're a horrible person, but now I kind of understand why you're horrible. So it's like, people are people bad or good, but then I think like to be so extreme sometimes is almost inherent, I think also through social media, where, I've seen Jordan Peterson talk at some places where he's burst into tears and he's talked about like, I just want to help people. I just want the world to be a wee bit brighter before I leave it. And that's all my mission is. And then, but people, like you said, now he's sick, are like screaming like, oh, I hope you die, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Where it's like, even though Jordan Peterson isn't someone you agree with, you can still have compassion for him as a human being.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's the thing is that you're right. It is always 0 and 1. There's no grey in between, which is a shame, because like the whole point is, like I said, I don't agree with everything Gary Vee says. I don't agree with everything Jordan Peterson says. It's about inferring ideas and applying them to your life. But yeah, whenever I hear anyone, if I ever bring him up and people go, oh, he's transphobic, blah, 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 I put all the insults in, I'm like, well, you haven't watched his content, so I don't really value your opinion, because I've watched nearly all his stuff. Like I said, whenever I'm working, I tend to have talks on. I'm like, you're not listening to what he's saying, and you've made your mind up before you've even listened. And he, like, the big thing he says is, he's got over like 800 hours of content on YouTube, and no one's found one smoking gun next to him. Like, he's never said anything particularly bad. Yet people label him as such. But the thing about the whole, like, people who interview serial killers and all that kind of stuff, and it's something that he's actually the one who introduced me to psychoanalytic thinking, like Jung and Nietzsche. And Nietzsche said there's like a phrase, when you stare into the abyss stares back at you. And it's all based around the fact that like everyone thinks they'd be the person to save Anne Frank in Nazi Germany. It's actually, the more you look into it and the more you observe it, is that actually you'd probably be you'd be part of the Nazi Germany. You know, it's a very special person who went against the national culture.
Yeah, because back then, like the Nazi Party were in charge of Germany. They were pushing the whole objective, and they were talking about people in a certain way. So, like, to stand amongst the quo and then say, like, no, I'm going to defy that, is something that's very rare. It's no like the common thinking, right?
Because the idea, what Peterson linked it back to it. He went to a prison and he was he tells a small story where he's basically, they're all monsters. They're all what you expect, like big, burly, scary guys. And he met a guy in there, basically the psychologist who took him there, left him for some reason. And he left with a small guy, innocuous, actually got on with him really well. And Jordan thought this was odd. Like, this guy I can imagine socializing with. I can imagine he's not that different to me. And then when he left, the psychiatrist said, "Oh, by the way, that guy you're talking pulverized like his wife's knees and killed her, and they killed like 4 police officers as well." And that's what it struck Jordan. There was like, this guy who I thought was not that dissimilar to me can do this. It's like, okay, that shows that you have a shadow, and then that's when it leads into all of the Jungian psychology, you know, the ego, the persona, and the shadow.
Yeah.
But all of that sort of stuff's really interesting, and that's what actually in the scene I'm planning right now, I want to have a big visual metaphor for Jungian psychology and some of Nietzsche's ideas.
I mean, like even when people talk about like environment as a thing that like defines you, it doesn't always. I mean, like there's a rapper I really love just now called Logic, and Logic. Oh mate, like recently, like I've actually just discovered he'd done a track with Wu-Tang, so I've heard it on repeat in the car all day. But yeah, like when he talks about like, you know, the stigma he's had for years because people see him as white, but he has a black father, and he grew up in a place where, you know, there was domestic abuse, there was drugs, there was police constantly, but then to think, you look at his personality, like he's a geek, he's a gamer, he's kind of like an introvert in some respects, but now isn't, and you know, he's led such a good productive life, he's done so much with his music, he's so hardworking, so like, you know, being where you are doesn't always define you, but I mean, there are some people who just cannot escape those traps. Like, you know, the guy who murdered his wife, you know, obviously done something horrible, but then, you know, maybe he was abused as a kid, or maybe he grew up in a household where he was never appreciated. So, you know, I think it's just being able to look past, it's the humbleness, right? Everything comes back to humbleness, and then looking at other people unobjectively and thinking, well, how has your life impacted you? Why are you like this? Is there something we can do to help?
But it comes back to as well what Jordan's saying, where it's like, you know, it's taking responsibility. Like, so it's that note Gary Vee said, he's like, oh yeah, you might have been born like, you know, in a nationality where you've got not a lot of privileges. You might be in a workplace where they're sexist or racist or homophobic. The market don't care. And that's the awful truth of it, is that no one cares. You take responsibility for your situation and you make the best of a bad situation. There's a few artists I know who've come through very, what's the word, trying pathways. I've had a relatively smooth ride. Like, you know, even though there's been a few hiccups here and there, it's relatively smooth compared to some of the stories I've heard. And I'm like, they took responsibility in that situation. Even though they're in a bad situation, and by all accounts, they had every right to bitch and moan, they took it upon themselves to make the best of a bad situation and get themselves out of it, because they took responsibility for the situation. That's where you live and die by. The people who are successful are able to take responsibility and get themselves out of there, and the people who don't, you know,
it's the mindset. It's the mindset, like you said. I mean, I remember someone ages ago, one of the guys actually who ended up getting an access, Kazia, he told me a story about, you know, I think it was an old Chinese tale where there was 2 guys who basically grew up with rich parents, and then they kind of fast forward, and the end of the story is that, you know, one of them ends up as like a kind of drug dealer and a life of crime and hangs with gangsters. The other one takes over the parents' business and becomes super successful and rich. And then, you know, one of them the bad guy gets put in a jail, and then eventually they're both interviewed, and, you know, they say to them, how did you end up here? And the rich guy says, oh, with parents like this, how could I not be like this? And then the guy who's in the jail also says the same thing. So it's like, you know, they both could have went either way, but then, you know, it comes down to the individual person. It comes down to the person who sat there. If they're going to take responsibilities, they can either be the guy in the jail cell, or they can be the guy that's running the company, but then it's up to them to also take that responsibility.
That comes back to so this is what's funny, like you can see that as an archetypal story to Cain and Abel, you know. Cain did not make the right sacrifices. When they told they were the wrong sacrifices, he was resentful. Whereas Abel, who made the right sacrifices and, you know, did everything right, you know, it's an archetypal story of taking responsibility. And also Cain kills his brother and God condemns him. And it's kind of like, okay, you may not buy religion, but there's still an archetypal story that is still relevant to now. Like I said, that Chinese story plays exactly the same. You go like, it's Cain and Abel being retold in modern skin. And that's where the issue, that's why I think I appreciate Jordan Peterson so much, is that I don't buy any of the religious tech. I'm not a religious person. I'm an atheist. And I found it useful to see somebody add some rationale and meaning into the stories to someone who, you know, does not buy it one bit. It's all stories. That's what it is to me.
Yeah, I think it's just the way how life can sometimes turn around for people depending on how you look at it. But then, like, I think about this story that was like told to me like years and years and years ago, but it still gives me chills when I talk about it. Where when Leonardo da Vinci painted the Last Supper, when he painted the painting initially, the first person he painted was Jesus. So he found this really kind of model at the time where, you know, the guy had long flowing blonde hair and pale skin and this beard and stuff, and it was really beautiful. And then painted him in the first part, and then it took him, I think it was like, you know, 5 or 6 years later, he finished it, and the last person he painted was Judas. So he went to find a person who was like, you know, in a jail cell, a really roughed up guy with terrible hair and, you know, terrible skin and was covered in dirt. And he found a guy in a local jail cell and got him to kind of pose for the last bit and painting Judas. And then the guy said to him, it says, Mr. Da Vinci, do you not recognize me? And he's like, no. He says, oh, I'm such and such. I'm the guy 5 years ago who posed to be painted as Jesus. So he's like, you know, life takes such a weird turn sometimes that you can never predict it. But I think as long as you try and constantly look about your assessment and situation and think about what's the best path to take, you know, sometimes you can deter down a dark path where, you know, something happens and you just completely go off the rails. But I think more now than ever in this day and age, you really need to try and think about staying as positive as you possibly can, not over positive to the point where, you know, like you're just denying reality. Of course, there is horrible things that happen in the world, but then no letting that darkness consume you and trying to stay as best you can above water for most of the time. I mean, that's just my take on it. I mean, I might be wrong, I might be right, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's, like I said, it's just these archetypal stories. It's all, but this is why I like them. This is why archetypes exist. This is why movies are based on them, because you keep coming back to that the initial message. You can't really argue with this. You can't distill it down anymore, interpret any simpler than that.
Yep.
But
yeah,
no, I think like I said, yeah, this is the whole point of archetypal stories. They're a thing that's cross cultural. They transcend generations. They transcend cultures and race and religion.
Yeah,
they work everywhere. That's why they're archetypes. Right?
The hero's journey, it's never really changed. It's just always been retold with different people.
I do love. I've started getting into watching movies and like working out what the archetypes are. Like, so the easy one is a Hobbit. You know, the Bilbo being too attached to his persona. He's in his dopey little village. He needs to. He gets told he's going to be a thief, and he's super against it. He's like, that's awful. And across his journey, getting out of his known world and going into the unknown, he descends into chaos. Because chaos is the unknown, and then he has to, you know, integrate his shadow to become the better version of him. Then he goes back to his old world, and he's a new, better version of himself. It's like,
the hero returns.
Exactly, like watching films and trying to figure out where the sort of underlying archetypes are is super interesting, because nearly every director does it.
Yes, yeah, but again, I think that's why Mike done a lot of his talks on James Cameron, because he's probably one of the few masters in the world that's, you know, definitely honed that down.
Chris Nolan for me right now, like.
Oh, Chris as well, yeah. Chris is, oh my god, yeah. The whole Dark Knight trilogy was just, I mean, one. I mean, apart from that, obviously he's done Interstellar, he's done many other great things, but like, like the Dark Knight trilogy for me was one of his.
He didn't get credit for Shutter Island. He was the creative producer behind Shutter Island.
Oh really?
Yeah, like because most Lionsgate studio films he has a hand in, and Shutter Island is still probably my favorite movie.
That's an interesting, again, for people who haven't watched it, I don't want to spoil it, but the ending and the whole kind of thing, that the way it kind of yeah, it's definitely, yeah, I think because like you can even see remnants of like his storytelling or things he done then to help the film production that then, you know, leaked into his future projects or things he done on the side. So yeah, like it's really, really interesting. But anyway, but I'd better let you go anyway, Alex, because I know you've got things to do and people to talk to that are more important than me. So I'll let you go. But just quickly, so people, because we never really walked through it, but then I wanted people kind of find it for their own. But where can people find you? What are you doing currently? Link wise.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, at Beddows Design, ArtStation. If you want to hit me up, I'm really active in the experience points and the DiNusty discords. If you have any questions, you can contact me on there. Yeah, right now, lead art, recently made full. I was originally associate lead art. I'm now a lead art at Dekogon, and I'm working at ArtStation, curating and finding content for the 3D learning while helping design features and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you want to get in contact or keep up with, obviously I'm doing a podcast as well, Game Dev Discussion podcast. Yeah, Twitter's probably the best place.
Grand. Okay. Well, just want to say thanks for Alex for giving up his time for coming on. It was awesome. And yeah, you got any comments or suggestions, hit them down in the comments below. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, podcast services around the world, and let me know if there's any other guests you want me to speak to. Until then, thanks again to Alex. Thanks again to you guys listening, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.